Hey guys, Kyle the Death Knight of Anime here, bringing you my review for Fire Force Episode 22. And okay, so first off, they kind of did a little bit of creative editing with the beginning of this episode because the angelic-like figure standing behind Sho, who's revealed as the evangelist, which yeah, that's definitely something we're gonna have to get to, was actually supposed to appear in the very first frame of the scene, but they actually held off on showing it until he made the comparison of the Adolla realm to hell, basically. And weirdly, I do actually like this edit because it brings a more subtle religious emphasis to the scene. Now, getting back to the whole thing of now, it just adds a little more subtlety to the scene, and it doesn't make like the let's just say it was kind of, let's just say, but pretty much always, but like the pretty much the pretty much figure of the evangelist like it made quite a few. It still made pretty much quite a few appearances in this episode, mind you. But I pretty much feel by pretty much using by pretty much using it sparingly in the beginning, it didn't seem as overbloated. I guess you could say overbloated to say in the once the evangelist appears again in later parts of the episode. So yeah. Now, getting back to the whole thing of being introduced to the evangelist itself, though, yeah, I believe it was mentioned last week and a little bit this week, and it definitely took center stage this week. But essentially, what this boils down to, and being able to see this figure who's known as the evangelist, is that the evangelist herself, or at least this version of the evangelist, is essentially a construct created by the evolution of one's Adolla burst and pyrokinesis, or as the two white clads who were watching this pretty much said, a fourth generation. So while it's debatable whether or not we could consider like Shinra to be a full-fledged fourth generation, he's definitely developed the powers now for sure of a fourth generation. And because which again is, but it is the reason, but being like developing his Adolla link and pyrokinesis is the reason as to why Sho can stop time, and Shinra has developed this pretty much light speed. But when it comes to the light clad, like obviously there's a very scientific explanation as to what was going on, as basically Licht had surmised. But with the white clad, they pretty much see it as an act of God's will. However, that doesn't mean it's not going to continue getting a little biblical. And even more so, obviously, the big thing to take away with Shinra's development in this chapter is that it's kind of weirdly a thing where even though we should be celebrating the fact that Shinra's powers have developed, in a weird way, it's kind of something we should worry about that he's actually developed his powers, because now if he gets out of this alive, which he is obviously, he's going to be even more of a target of the white clad than ever before, and he needs to be careful with this new power. Otherwise, if he's not careful on how he uses it, he could end up doing exactly what the white clad want him to do, even if he does it unintentionally. So yeah, it's like one of those things where even though it is a big step up in terms of Shinra's development, it's something we still need to be a little bit wary of, almost, because in more than one, they're pretty much bound to use this in some way in order to they're bound to use this in some way in order to destroy the Amaterasu and bring in this whole new pretty much great purge or great fire purge and whatnot. um, Now, adaptation-wise, this was a very well-executed episode, and I know I say that a lot, but in this case, it definitely applies. Just for the fact of seeing like shows like Severed Universe like on screen, which I will admit is less impressive here than in the manga, but just on the basis of capturing that trippy, disjointed feel, it works. But even beyond that, like adaptation-wise, I think this is like the best episode in the sense where every well, the Severed Universe thing was a little bit hit and miss, I'd say. Every other scene, every other moment in this episode still felt like it leaped off the page of the manga. Like it really, like with pretty much with pretty much with majority of the other episodes, you could clearly distinguish what pretty much is the anime and what's the manga. But with these past two episodes, honest to God, it's really felt like we've reached a point where the manga has really started to like pretty much leap off the screen practically or something like that. Like I've really been getting that vibe through just the past couple episodes. Honestly, David Productions has really improved in how they've adapted this series, and I hope if we get a season 2 that they continue to bring us this level of quality or something like that. Hopefully. Um, Now, and another thing they did too as well is and one thing they did too that made it gel even better is that, well, obviously they did kind of cut little things out here and there, but most of it was, but in some, it still gelled better than most times they've done this, because most of the stuff they cut out was stuff that was like posturing and whatnot. In fact, as and even more so after watching this episode, I think I have an even better idea of how this like first season is gonna will end with only 2 episodes left. I think I've got an idea anyway. And yeah, let's talk about the fight itself, because oh boy, just like last week, it was a rush. And while I'd hesitate to say that art and animation was as good as last week, it still was an amazing spectacle. And the big thing with this episode is that Shinra finally tapped into the power of the Adolla burst over pretty much others like activating it through him. So it shows he's like gaining control of it. And while some might consider it a little iffy that family connections and friendship is kind of what feels like for Shinra's link, I think it still works here because it's being used in a way to snap Sho out of whatever has warped his mind, or whatever warped his mind, and in some respects, it kind of bucks the trend of friendship power up by the fact that it is a power that can only be activated by the strength of the connection, which is the reason he was never able to activate it himself before activate himself before. And at the same time, Shinra and Sho's abilities do really cancel each other out nicely. Like, do really cancel each other's out too. So I think that's another like good reason for it. Now one thing to mention, and there were loads of comments like this on the Crunchyroll site about this, is that looking back on this fight, it is kind of fitting that the David production is the one handling this series, because yeah, I can't lie, a lot of people who commented on this episode definitely kind of hit a little bit of a mark close to home when they say that the Sho versus Shinra fight does have qualities that remind me of the Dio fight and basically Stardust Crusaders. Like, it's not a complete ripoff, but there are elements that are there that make me say Yeah, I can see where they're coming from. So yeah. Um, and okay. I know it's and yeah, standout performance of the episode definitely goes it definitely goes to Daisuke. It definitely goes to Daisuke Sakaguchi, the Prince Seiyu for Licht, because you could tell throughout the entire episode that Daisuke is just having a ball with this performance. But like in previous episodes, you could tell he was clearly having fun. But in this episode, you could tell he was having a ball playing Licht. Like every time Licht was on screen, you could tell like that Daisuke is just chewing every single moment and line that he has to say. And while I've not watched the English dub yet, I imagine so far Ian Sinclair has managed to deliver a very similar performance, but by chewing just as much by doing just as much line chewing with Licht as Daisuke has. But yeah, Daisuke is he's just owning this role, and I love it. um, Also, briefly during this fight, we basically cut back to two white-clad members, one of which is Yana, watching the fight from the balcony. And when Yana, the pretty much guy who makes doppelgangers, said that he's not human, I kind of chuckled a bit at that line because the first thing I thought was, yeah, dude, we all know you're not human. What we are still trying to figure out, however, is what exactly type of species you are. Seriously, what is that guy? He's definitely not human. Is he a doll himself? What the hell is he? He's not human. That much is certain. He's completely disconnected from humanity. That much I know. But yeah, guys, that's my review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Analyst, or Crunchyroll. Dead Night of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.